Hello, good day everyone. Welcome to this online asynchronous session for how to find the piercing point and the lines of intersection using CAD. Okay, so the techniques that I'll be showing here today, the concepts behind the techniques that I'll be showing today will be presented in another video. No, ibibigay ko na lang sa inyo yung parang a detailed understanding of how the methodology works. Dito more of ipapakita ko yung application ng concepts na yun diretso na as applied in a CAD setting. No? Right? So let's jump straight to the lesson. But before that, we can answer this first point right here. No? So the intersection of a line and a plane is a point, obviously, because if you just try to think about it, no? Think of a piece of paper, kunwari, that's a plane. Tapos is-skewer nyo siya with a pencil, I mean. You'll notice na yung intersection point ng pencil and paper mo would actually be a point, no? And this is also known as a piercing point, no? Kasi if you go back to our analogy, yung pencil natin sort of pierces the paper, no? At and exactly one point, and that is your piercing point, often labeled as just PP, no? Okay, so in ES1, we label piercing points as just PP, and we can number the piercing points depending on how many piercing points there are. So we can have PP1, PP2, etc., etc. Okay, now let's determine the piercing point of this given scenario. No? We have plane ABC, tapos meron din tayong line 1, 2. And we should expect a piercing point here. The way we do it is, and the most intuitive approach would be to imagine the plane as if it were an edge view, no? So if we show the plane in its edge view, then it will appear as a line. Tapos, the line will intersect with that edge view at a particular point, and that is exactly the location of the piercing point. Tama? So, I'll be showing this in more detail sa, sa video na isa-send ko sa inyo. Actually, pinapakita ko doon yung parang a sort of visualization kung paano siya nangyayari. Okay? Pero, let's do it here. So, this is AC is conveniently parallel to the folding line, which means that AC here is in its true length. This is in its true length. So, therefore, we can create a perpendicular reference plane. So we can do something like this, extend this. Then we do a perpendicular reference plane, like so. And let's label this reference plane, no? So this is ARP1. Actually, isa lang yung kailangan natin, no? So, isang additional view lang. So we can just say ARP. And HRP to the left naman. Okay. Alright, so basis for distances is dito sa 2 views away, so that's FRP. So let's take our circle. So, and A and C share the same projection line, and they are also, they have the same distance because it's parallel to the folding line. So, therefore dito, let's just trim it. Ito, nandito ngayon si AC, CA, no? More if we want to be accurate, CA shown in its point view, right? And we can probably make this as a final answer, no? Okay. Tapos next, let's also project point B. Point B is this distance away. Okay, natin siya dyan. Trim it down. And now, we can connect this point and this point. Right? So, this is point B. I'll just write it down now. Point B. So, ito, ngayon, will be my edge view, no? So, this is the edge view. Alright. Next is, let's project line 1, 2. Let's make 2 projection lines. One for point 1. So, and another for point 2. Like so. Okay. This is the location, the distance of point 1. Let's trim this down. Next is, this is the distance of point 2. No? And let's trim this. Let's delete the circle. Now we can connect the 2 points, point 1 and point 2. And we can probably label it as well, no? Para ito malito. Yan. So this is now line 1, 2. Okay? Now we can see na again, when we take our, or we show the edge view of the plane, it looks like a line. Tapos it is intersecting with 1, 2 at exactly one particular point, no? And this is now actually our piercing point. So this is our piercing point. So to find the location of the piercing point, we just have to project it backwards, no? Onto the given views. So we project it here. That's our piercing point. And let's mark our piercing point with a point dito. And we can change the P type, no? So we just type in P type. Thus it opens the point style menu. Usually in ES1 we use this, no? Ito yung common na ginagamit sa ES1. It's a circle with a dot in the center. Pero para mas obvious siya, let's use this for ES1, for this mid-year, no? Ito yung gamitin nating symbol for the piercing point, wherein circle siya na merong crosshair. Okay? So that's our piercing point right there. Right? Now we can find the, let's find the piercing point as projected dito sa bottom. And again, one thing, hindi ko pala nabanggit ito, no? Pero I'll be mentioning this a lot dun sa lecture video na yung concept video na isasend ko sa inyo, is that the piercing point is a shared point, no? So it's shared between 1, 2 and ABC, and therefore pagka pinoproject natin siya, we can project it along the point, the line itself, no? Kasi itong si line, kaya natin ma-determine kung saan siya yung location niya, no? Because distinct yung set of kumbaga yung loci ni line, no? Distinct kasi, so that's why we project it using our line, no? Ito na, pina-project natin siya dyan. Okay, so nandyan siya. So that is our piercing point, and probably we can make this a final answer, this one and this one. Make this a final answer, and let's label it as well. This is oops, let's do final answer. I'll label this as a piercing point, and this one also is a piercing point. Okay, now you'll notice whenever we have this sort of problems, no, where 1, 2 intersects your ABC, it intersects at this range, no? Ito siya, from this point to this point. Usually naka-broken lines yan. So naka-broken lines siya kasi we have to determine the correct visibility of the lines and planes, no? Correct visibility just refers to showing whether a line is on top of another plane or vice versa. Okay? So, in this particular case, and again, dun sa video na isasend ko, dun sa concept video, i-explain in more detail, no, kung paano siya nag-work. Dito, mechanically, papakita ko lang kung paano natin isa-solve. Okay? The way we do this is we take a sort of, a projection line. Tapos, titingnan natin kung ano yung unang tatamaan ng projection line natin. Kung sino yung unang tatamaan, siya yung, kumbaga, on top of which other whatever we are trying to assess, no? Okay, so for example, I'll give you an example dito, no? Kunwari, if this is line AC, this intersection point right here, I'm checking whether si line AC ba or si line 1, 2 yung on top. Okay, so which should be shown first. If I bring it down, I'll notice that unang tatamaan si line 1, 2 kasi nandito si line 1, 2, diba? Si line AC is nandito pa sa baba. Alright, so si line 1, 2 yung unang tinamaan. This is, and I'll just create this line, no? So you notice, if you take the projection line, line 1, 2 is nearer or closer to the folding line. Therefore, siya yung actually yung nasa taas, no? Nasa ibabaw, and therefore it will be shown as a solid line. Tapos si line AC, siya yung nasa likod ng line natin, right? So meaning that for our final answer, from this point to this point, dapat solid yung line natin. like so. So that is how it should look like now. Okay? So ito si 1, 2. Tapos pagpasok niya sa piercing point, it makes sense no na parang nasa likod na siya ngayon ng plane, and that's why broken line siya dyan. Okay? So whenever you have a piercing point, nag-change yung visibility ng lines natin. Pero we can also double check, no? Although hindi na necessary yung step na to kasi again, if this is solid and it passes to the piercing point, dapat nag-change visibility siya. Pero if you want to double check, we can also use the same logic as we did here. So we take a projection line here, and in this instance, we are comparing line BC with line 1, 2. Tapos titignan natin kung sino unang tatamaan. So if you bring it down like so, you'll notice na unang tinamaan si line BC. 1, 2 is still here. BC is here. So meaning si BC is closer to the reference plane. Therefore, dapat si BC will be on top. Kaya ito yung magiging solid. Tapos si 1, 2 will be hidden right now. This is what we call as hidden lines. So hidden lines are represented by broken lines. So hidden lines meaning nasa likod siya, no? Okay? Now, the showing correct visibility is independent of the views that you are doing, no? So meaning kung meron kang conclusion dito, hindi mo pwedeng automatic i-conclude din dito, no? So hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na since itong part ng 1, 2 is solid, dapat itong part ng 1, 2 din dito is solid. So you'll have to check every view, no? Okay? So kunwari dito, I can check again. This is AB versus 1, 2, and we always do this by pair, no? When we are checking correct visibility by pair tayo gumagawa parati. So, AB versus 1, 2. We bring it upwards. Tingnan natin kung sino yung unang tatamaan, and we make it perpendicular to the folding line. And you see the projection line. Unang tinamaan si AB, no? This is line AB. So, una siyang tinamaan, and 1, 2 nandito pa sa taas. So, meaning AB is closer to the reference plane. So therefore, etong AB na to is now the solid. Tapos si 1, 2 dito will be the hidden line. So broken dapat siya dito. So broken siya from here to here. And once it crosses the piercing point, magiging solid na siya. And again, that makes intuitive sense, no? Kasi parang pagka nag-cross yung, kunwari, isipin natin yung pencil and paper, no? Pagka nag-cross siya dun sa paper natin, it should show it pagka hidden siya before, then it will dapat lilitaw siya after it pierces through the paper. Tapos baliktad naman, pagka kita siya before tapos nag-pierce siya dun sa paper natin, then dapat hindi na siya kita after the piercing point. So hopefully that makes sense. So again, just check the concept video. It will show you a lot more visualization now. Okay? And this is now complete, no? And whenever you have problems dito sa excuse me, let me just take a sip of water. Sorry. So whenever you have problems like this, when you are finding the piercing points and lines of intersection, it's always assumed that kailangan ipakita yung correct visibility. Alright? So hindi pwedeng kahit hindi nakabanggit dun sa similar to yung sa projection natin wherein we always assume that we are asked to complete all views. Dito din sa mga problems na to, we are always assuming that we need to show correct visibility unless otherwise stated siya sa problem na hindi na kailangan. Right? So this is what the final answer would look like if we were to add an additional view using the edge view method. Okay? Let's take a look at the next problem, which states that without using an additional view, we are to determine the piercing point and we need to show correct visibility again. Okay, so dito, this time, we can't use an additional view to get the edge view, no? But it is still possible to get the piercing point even without an additional view. And this is the preferred method of finding the piercing point, no? Because it doesn't use any additional views. Tapos, the technique is fairly simple din now. This technique is known as the cutting plane method. Kasi just a brief explanation of the method, parang we are imagining in a particular view, let's say for example HRP, na si 3, 4 is contained in a cutting plane that is shown in its edge view dito sa HRP, and it sort of slices atong si plane XYZ, leaving behind a trace, no, from this point to this point. Tapos ang gagawin natin ngayon is hahanapin lang natin yung quote-unquote trace na yon. dito sa bottom view, and where that trace intersects with our original given line, that is where the piercing point is located at. Again, more visualization can be seen in the concept video. Okay, so we can do it here, kunwari, and it wouldn't really matter no kung ano yung pipiliin nating view kung saan natin gagawin yung cutting plane. Doesn't really matter, it will give us the same results, no? Okay, so for example, if I do it this way, so this is where our sort of cutting plane, and I'll zoom in. Yung cutting plane natin is cutting through our plane, no? Leaving behind this yellow line. This is our, I call it a trace, no? Pero it may have different names, pero yun yung term na ginagamit ko. So parang nagli-leave behind siya ng trace dito sa plane, and hanapin lang natin yung trace na yun. So this is this point is in between xy, so dapat pag pinoject natin pababa, should be in between xy as well. So xy is here. So ito naman, this is yz. Let's project it papunta dito sa yz, no? This is yz. Alright, now we can connect. So the trace is located here, and where the trace intersects the line, that is your piercing point. Right, so ito siya. This is now our piercing point. We can probably use a final answer dito. Mark it with a point. And now we can project it upwards, no? Patas. Alright? So that's the easiest way we can find the piercing point. So it's much more, it's a lot faster, no? As compared to the edge view method, wherein gagawa pa tayo ng additional views. Dito, isang additional view pa. Dito, automatic, only no additional views, mahanap agad-agad natin yung piercing points natin. So this is the preferred method. And just to show you na hindi nagmamatter kung ano yung pinili nating view, kung saan natin ginawa yung cutting plane, no? I can take, for example, ito. I'll use a magenta color para mas ma-differentiate natin, no? Kunwari yan. This is now the trace as viewed from FRP. Kunwari nandito yung cutting plane natin. Pag this is line xy, so xy siya nandito, and this is line xz. Dapat po pinoject natin papunta din sa xz, and notice how if we connect that, they intersect at the same point, no? Obviously dito medyo may inconsistencies, no? Again, because this is a PDF attachment, may konting inconsistencies siya, pero if this were done in CAD, they will meet at exactly the same point, no? Ito, pag hinanap natin yung piercing point. So again, hindi nagmamatter kung saan tayo kumukuha ng cutting plane natin. Okay, so as easy as that. It's very easy to find the piercing point without any additional views, no? We just need to use the cutting plane method. Note kung nasaan natin saan natin iniiwan yung parang trace nung pag-cut natin sa plane. So that's here and here, and baba lang natin siya, and where the trace intersects with the line, that is where the piercing point is. Okay, now the good thing about this method is because we are projecting from the apparent intersection of the line with the edges of the plane, meron na din tayong projection lines for correct visibility. So kaya again, ito yung not only is it a simpler method than the edge view method, it's also a more efficient method, no? Kasi nakaka-reuse tayo ng lines. So for example, ito, this line right here can be used para makita ko yung correct visibility na rin. Kunwari, I'm checking here for using this line. I'm checking sino yung nasa taas, si XY ba or si 3, 4. And if I bring it down, by the way, before that pala, no? Let me just label my piercing points. Ito. And ito din, this is now the piercing point. Okay? So, again, so I'm checking, again, when we're checking correct visibility, it's always by pair, no? Pairs of lines. So ito, XY versus 3, 4. Let me check. Let's bring it down. Unang tinamaan si XY, no? Nandito si XY. Si 3, 4 is nandito pa sa baba, no? Ito pa lang si 3, 4. Okay? So, which means that XY is on top, no? So, nasa taas si XY. And therefore, ito, broken line si 3, 4 dito up until the piercing point. And beyond the piercing point, beyond the piercing point, it should now be, ulit ko na, beyond the piercing point, dapat magiging solid line na siya. Okay? Okay, always remember that after the piercing point, nag-change yung visibility natin. Pero again, if you want to double check, you can always do another separate na projection line. No? Kunwari ito, this is YZ versus 3-4. And kung titingnan nyo, unang tinamaan si 3-4 before YZ dito sa baba. Meaning si 3-4 yung nasa taas. Right? So let's do the same. Dito, we can check either here or here. Doesn't really matter. Let's just do this one. I'm checking between XZ naman. So that's XZ versus 3-4. So if I check it, unang tinamaan si 3-4, no? 3-4 is here. XZ na dito pa sa taas. So, dapat si 3-4 yung solid line natin. Right? So ito, from here to here, solid dapat si XZ. And mali pala yung kinonectan ko, no? Pero okay lang. Doesn't really matter. Kasi ano naman siya eh. Minute lang naman. Okay. But just for accuracy, ulitin ko lang yun. Okay. So again, using this projection line, you can see na unang tinamaan si 3-4 before XE. So 3-4 is closer to the reference plane than your XE. So 3-4 should be shown above. And dito, broken ulit si 3-4. Right? So it's as easy as that. Dali lang paghanap ng piercing point when you are given the plane XYZ. When you're given a plane and a line, I mean. Okay? So, let's proceed with lines of intersection naman. Now, when you have two planes that are intersecting one another, yung magiging interaction nila will be, or yung intersection nila will be a line. And this is also known as your line of intersection, or just simply as, we call it in ES1, LOI lang yung term na ginagamit natin. No? Right? Okay? So, LOI, line of intersection. So, let's try to determine the line of intersection of the given line and plane. We are shown these two planes right here, ABC and 1, 2, 3. Now, the concept is fairly easy lang naman dito. No? We are imagining na one of the edges of one of the planes is piercing through the planes. No? So, for example, we can imagine na si 1, 2, this line right here is piercing through AB, and it has a piercing point kunwari. Tapos we can also imagine na kunwari si 1, 3 is piercing the plane ABC. Tapos and this is just rough estimate lang. Kunwari lang nandito yung piercing point nila. Tapos nandito yung piercing point ni 1, 3 with AB. And now, if you connect the two piercing points, you should be able to find the line of intersection. No? So the line of intersection is just the connection between two piercing points. Okay. Now, whenever you have a plane intersecting with another plane, you will always find two piercing points. No? And the challenge now is to find those piercing points. Because you can have a scenario that looks like this, pero we could easily also find a scenario where, kunwari, si AB pala yung may piercing point with plane 1, 2, 3. And let's say si BC yung may piercing point with plane 1, 2, 3 as well. Parang ganyan. So we can have a scenario like that. May scenarios din wherein, kunwari, si 1, 3 yung may piercing point with AB. Like so. Pero at the same time, si AC yung may piercing point with 1, 3. And this is a scenario wherein para silang nag-i-interlock yung mga planes. So instead of yung first two scenarios na binigay ko, parang one plane is piercing another plane. Pero this scenario is a sort of the two planes are sort of interlocking with each other. No? So again, many scenarios. No? So pero in all scenarios, there is exactly just two piercing points. No? And once we found those two piercing points, pwede na natin sila i-connect to find the line of intersection. Right? So again, more visualization dun sa concept video na isa-send ko sa inyo. Just check it out para mas ma-visualize nyo, mag-gets nyo yung theories and concepts behind the methods that I'm teaching now. Right? So, if that's the case, then we'll have to check all of the lines. No? Kailangan natin i-check lahat ng lines if they have a piercing point with the other plane. Right? So, we can check, kunwari, AC muna check natin. Then, we check 1, 2, we check BC, so on and so forth. So, if these are two planes, there are a total of 3 edges. Tapos, dun sa kabila, 3 edges. Then we need to check a total of 6, no? Okay? So, 6 lines yung i-check natin. Pero we can trim that further kasi two of the edges here, specifically si AB tsaka si 2, 3, they do not appear to intersect the other plane, no? So, pwede automatically rule out na natin to sila. So, 2, 3 can be ruled out, AB can be ruled out. So, from 6, we are now down to 4. So, apat lang yung i-check natin. So, eto, wala namang parang way to make this more efficient, no? Purely random lang talaga to. I just like to do it, ginagawa ko clockwise na lang, no? So, for example, I start with AC, then then I go to 1, 2, then I go to BC, then I go last line 1, 3. Ganun ko lang ginagawa. And kung saan ako makahanap ng piercing point, then titigil na ako if nakahanap ako ng dalawang piercing point. Right? So, let's start with AC muna. I'm checking. And again, when you're doing this, you are isolating one of the edges, no? So, you are treating the edge as if it were a line. So, parang ganitong scenario lang ulit siya. This one. So, you're treating one of the edge as if it were a line. Tapos, check mo kung may piercing point sila. Tapos, if wala, then you proceed to the next one. So, again, I'm treating AC as if it were a line. So, if AC were the line, so, ito yung cutting plane method natin. We are checking yung trace niya. And you have to be careful pag ganito, no? Kasi in this scenario, again, PDF kasi to. If you notice, multiple snapping points, no? So, ito yung sinasabi ko na hindi accurate siya dahil naka-PDF attachment lang siya. Pero again, in the, plates na ibibigay ko sa inyo, accurate naman siya kasi generated through CAD yung mga attachments natin. Okay? We could probably have generated this better, pero kung ginamit ko is yung PDF import, no, instead of yung attach. Pero ito, this is better for the video, no, kasi mas madali siyang makita. Right? So, in any case, yan ko na lang to. I'll connect this one and this one. So, that's my cutting plane. And it's cutting through 1, 2, 3. Tapos, gagawin ko is, project ko to. So, this is in between. Again, AC is treated as the line. 1, 2, 3 is the plane. So, ito, I'll project this downwards. This is part of line 1, 2. Project natin downwards. Ito si 1, 2. Ito naman, this is part of line 1, 3. Project it downwards. And nandito yung 1, 3 natin. So, if you connect that, notice how itong parang trace natin, yan yung quote-unquote trace na sinasabi ko. The trace does not intersect with line AC. Tama? Nandito kasi si AC, nandito yung trace. So, meaning, this particular na edge does not have a piercing point with the plane 1, 2, 3. So, we can proceed to the next, no? Okay? So, yung next natin is, check natin we're done with AC. Check naman natin si 1, 3. 1, 2. Okay? So, does 1, 2 have a piercing point with plane ABC? Okay? So, I can reuse this, no? Ito, let's reuse this line. So, now, I'm treating 1, 2 as if it were a line. Tapos, si ABC yung plane ko. So, ito, this should be, this is along AC. So, ipoproject ko. And if you want, we could also delete this, no? Delete lang natin para hindi tayo nalilito. Kasi, if we retain that, nangyayari kasi is, prone yung students na magkamali dahil hindi na nila alam kung aling projection lines yung sinusundan nila, no. So in CAD we can delete it in actual yung pencil and paper. Hindi pinapa-erase yung mga projection lines, so nire-retain lang siya. So that's why it makes it a little bit more confusing sa pencil and paper. Pero in CAD we can just delete it para mas malinis yung work natin. So again, we are treating 1, 2 as if it were a line. ABC naman yung plane natin. So, ito. This is part of AC. We bring it down. And I'll just trim it. Oops. Sorry. Not trim it. Make it hanggang AC lang para, again, hindi tayo nalilito. Ito, okay lang. I-retain ko lang yan. Hindi naman nakakalito yan. Okay. So, ito naman. This is part of BC. We bring it down hanggang BC. And perpendicular projection line hanggang dito. Medyo marami yung snapping points. Kaya nalilito si yan. I could probably right click override ko siya para sure yung perpendicular yung isa-snap niya. Hindi pala pwede mag-extend pag naka-override snapping. So let me do this BC perpendicular. I-overextend ko na lang siya para sure na yung perpendicular yung tinatrack, no? Okay? Now, from here, I can connect this one. This is now our trace. And we can see that the trace intersects with line 1, 2. So we have a piercing point. No? Ito. This point right here, that is a piercing point. And we can project it upwards to find the piercing point dito naman. Okay? So this is the piercing point. Like so. Tama? So, we have the first piercing point. Kailangan na lang natin one more piercing point. No? Right? So, proceed tayo. AC, wala tayo nahanap ng piercing point. 1, 2, meron tayo nahanap. This one. And let's just label this as PP1. No? Let's label this as PP1. And let's label the other one as PP2. Now, hindi natin sa final, when you're doing the plates, okay lang na hindi i-label yung piercing, when you're finding lines of intersection, okay lang na hindi i-label yung piercing points natin. Kasi understandable naman, once you have the LOI, it's understood that yung endpoints ng LOI is the piercing points. So, okay lang hindi i-label, no? Sorry, but PP2 to. This should be PP1 as well. Okay, so it's understood na kasi, so okay lang na hindi siya kasama sa final answer. Pero just for this video, li-label ko siya para hindi tayo malito. Right? So, we're done with 1, 2. Proceed tayo. Ikot lang tayo. And this is my preferred methodology, no? For you guys, you can do random. Pwede namang arbitrary. Pipili kayo ng lines. Check nyo each one of the lines. Tapos, see which one has piercing points. Pero I just like to do it parang counterclockwise, no? Or clockwise. So, this case, counterclockwise ako. Start with AC. Then, 1, 2. Then, next ko i-check is itong si BC naman. So, I'm checking this BC. Again, pivoting na naman ulit. I'm taking BC as if it were a line. Tapos, I'm checking if it has a piercing point with line 1, 2, 3. Right? So, para lang hindi ako malito, again, I'll just delete this, itong projection line na to. Pwede ko i-delete lang to para lang I'm maintaining 2 projection lines. So, I can also delete this now kasi okay naman na siya. Okay? So, this is BC. I'm treating BC as if it were a line. Plane natin is 1, 2, 3. So, ito, this is along 1, 2. We project that projection line hanggang 1, 2. So, I can just shorten this. Hanggang 1, 2 ko lang siya gagawin. Okay? 1, 2. Tapos ito naman next. This is along 1, 3. So, dapat, let me change layers. So, this is along 1, 3. So, I'll be projecting it papunta sa line 1, 3 as well, which is this one. And let me connect. That is now my trace. And you can see na hindi sila nag-intersect with BC, no? Nandito si BC. This trace does not intersect with BC. Which leaves me with my final line na i-check ko. So, dito, wala tayong piercing point. My final line to be checked is itong si line 1, 3, no? So, again, we check line 1, 3 as if it were a line. Tapos, plane ulit si ABC. So, again, in this particular methodology class, yung parating nagkakamali yung mga students is parang hindi nila na effectively isolate yung edge. So, parang nalilito sila kung sino yung tinitreat as a line, sino yung tinitreat as a plane, and so on and so forth. Especially kasi you're moving back and forth. So, just be very mindful of that. No? Always remember kung ano yung tinitreat mo as a line, ano yung tinitreat mo as a plane para hindi kayo malilito. Right? So, last check natin is treating line 1, 3 as if it were a line and checking if it has a piercing point with plane ABC. Okay? So, I'll just delete this other projection para hindi tayo malito. I can reuse this. This is, I'm checking 1, 3 as if it were a line. So, dapat ito is along BC. So, hanggang BC lang natin siya ilalagay. So, we can extend this again hanggang BC. Yan. Tapos, we can delete this siguro. Tapos, ito. This is line AC. Let's project it downwards hanggang line AC. And when we connect it to get our trace. So again, dito yung parang cutting plane natin sa 1, 3. Nababa natin siya. And makikita natin, it does intersect with 1, 3, no? Which is this. So this one is the piercing point. Okay? And now, pwede na natin siyang itaas, piercing point, papunta doon sa 1, 3. And if we connect the 2 points, so this is, I'll just label it dito na as piercing point. Piercing point number 2. This is piercing point number 2. And now, pwede na natin siyang label to. We can connect this one, and this is now our LOI. Okay, so I can say LOI to, and we can do the same here. Let's type in the text. Let's say LOI dito. Alright. So, meron tayong LOI. We're not done yet, no? We have shown the LOI, pero hindi pa natin napapakita yung correct visibility, no? Right? So, kailangan natin isa-isa i-check to, no? Bawat parang dito, lines, yung pairs of lines, dapat i-check natin siya kung sino yung nasa taas, yung nasa baba, para malaman natin yung correct visibility. Pero, there is an algorithm to this, no? And you can follow this algorithm if you, if you want, you can follow this algorithm para mas mabilis nyo ma-figure out. And the way it works is, the algorithm is, whenever you encounter an apparent intersection point or a piercing point, change visibility kayo. Okay, so I'll show it in action, no? But for this, kailangan muna natin mag-establish ng initial line. So let's take, for example, and I'll use a different color now just to para lang mas malinaw. Like for this, I'm using this to check correct visibility kunwari. So, let's check kung sino yung nasa taas, si 1, 2 ba or si AC. So, let's check 1, 2 versus AC. Pag binaba natin siya, unang tinamaan si AC, no? Tama? This is AC. Si 1, 2 nandito pa sa baba. Therefore, si AC yung nasa taas. So, AC should be solid. So, meaning solid siya. So, we can draw this one as solid. Oh, solid CAC. Okay. So, from here, we can use the algorithm, no? So, again, the algorithm is whenever you encounter an apparent intersection point, change visibility kayo. So, you start solid. Kung solid to, then dapat hidden. Then, you encounter a piercing point. So, change ulit ng visibility. So, solid ulit. So, you do solid. You encounter an apparent intersection point. So, hidden ulit. Apparent intersection point. So, solid ulit. So, dyan. Piercing point. Hidden ulit. Until you end with your starting point. Okay? So, that's the algorithm. That will make it a lot easier to, para mas mabilis. Okay, so again, ang ginawa natin is nag-check tayo AC versus 1, 2. We have shown na si AC is closer to the reference plane, so solid siya. So whenever we encounter an apparent intersection point, change visibility. So solid, hidden, tapos piercing point, so solid, apparent intersection, hidden, apparent intersection, solid, piercing point, hidden. Okay? So hopefully that will help you make and this works for any parang plane configuration, as long as you just think of the critical points. So yung critical points lang naman natin is either apparent intersection or piercing point. So yun lang yung dalawang scenarios na kailangan yung bantayan, no, when you're changing visibility. Mhm. Okay. So, let's let me change the ano, no, kasi gusto ko mas makapal yung lines para mas makita nyo. Probably can go 0.4. And para lang mas makita natin, or baka okay na yung 0.35. Okay. Tapos, hindi pa tayo tapos, no, kasi again, correct visibility is independent of the different views. So, we can't make the same conclusion dito sa baba from the conclusions we made here. So, we have to check again. Okay. So, I'll use another projection line to establish an initial na ano, no, parang solid or hidden line. Tapos from there, tsaka ako gagamitin yung algorithm ko. Right? So, let's start here. Ito, kunwari ito, I'm just picking an arbitrary na intersection point or apparent intersection point. This is between 1, 2, and AB. Get natin siya. 1, 2, and AB. This is 1, 2, and AB. Check natin. Oh, sorry. Hindi ko pala naklik. Not AB, sorry. 1, 2, and BC. So, 1, 2, and BC. Check natin. Sino unang tinamaan? BC, no? BC first. 1, 2 is here. Nasa taas. So, BC is the solid line. Tama? So, we can... BC is solid. Tama? Check ko lang ulit, ha. Again, 1, 2 versus BC tayo. So, unang tinamaan si BC. So, BC is solid. So, BC. So, just use the algorithm. So, if this is solid, then therefore hidden, then solid, then hidden dito, then solid again, then hidden dito. Okay? So, that is how the final answer should look like. Just to show you, no, kasi ito, marami kasing construction line. Let me just make the construction line not visible. So, turn off ko muna siya. This is, ano nga dito? Ayan. Turn off ko muna yung construction layers, no? So, para siyang ganyan. So, you could imagine, no, kung ano yung itsura ng two planes. Para sila nag-interact dito. Parang itong bottom part of plane 1, 2, 3 is piercing from in front. Papasok siya sa ABC. It slices through this LOI. Tapos, lalabas siya dun sa likod ni ABC. Hopefully, you can see that, no? Tapos, ito naman, opposite naman. And para lang mas malinaw, I can probably temporarily change the color of the final answer, no? Hopefully, mas nagigets nyo pag ganito. So, parang ganyan, no? So, itong part ng plane na to, it pierces through plane ABC, through this LOI. Tapos, lulusot siya doon sa likod naman. Tapos, dito naman, parang itong part na to, nasa taas. Then, it pierces pababa, slicing the plane ABC with this LOI. Tapos, lulusot siya doon sa likod while it's going down. Lumusot na siya doon sa likod. Hopefully, na-imagine nyo siya. No? Again, imagination is one of the keys dito sa ano, no? Kasi when you check your work, it should make sense, no? Parang the moment you say na parang hindi nagme-make sense yung drawing ko, that is the time you might want to check, no? Baka may mali kayong ginawang mga piercing points, etc., etc. Ito, this makes a lot of sense to me. Parang clearly na-imagine ko sila in space kung how they interact. So, it's a good sign, no, that I probably did it correctly. Okay? So, let me revert back to my original colors. Ay, bawal ba? Hindi pala pwede mag-Control Z. Let me show construction lines ulit. Alright. So, last na scenario. Let's imagine, kunwari ito, two seemingly non-intersecting lines. They do not seem to intersect, no? Wala silang overlap. Can they still have a line of intersection? So, the quick answer is yes, no? They can still have a line of intersection. And this is because This is because yung mga planes natin, yung planes natin pinapakita natin are sort of plane segments lang sila representing a infinite plane. Therefore, if we were to infinitely expand these two planes, uh, we can find a line of intersection nila. Alright? So, yun yung theory. And again, look at the concept videos. Feeling ko mas maintindihan nyo pag ano. Dito, I'll just show the methodology on how we use what we call as the special cutting plane method, no, to find the LOI of two seemingly non-overlapping or non-intersecting planes. Right? So, we have XYZ and 456. Obviously, non-overlapping. Hanapin natin yung plane of intersection nila. So, dito, to use this method, we use what we call as special cutting planes. No? So, the special cutting planes are any arbitrary planes as long as it intersects your planes, as long as it intersects the planes. No? Okay? So, for example, ito, I can do one cutting plane here. So, let's imagine isang cutting plane dito. And we can, and let's label this as your CP1, kunwari, cutting plane 1. And we can do another cutting plane, and I'll choose a different color, no, kasi it's will be easier to track if we use a different color here. And let's call this cutting plane number 2. Doesn't really matter kung ano yung orientation nila, no. In practice sa pencil and paper, usually ang ginagawa ng students is para they can create the cutting planes in quick succession is nakaparallel lang sila, no. So parang ganyan. So just imagine yung sliding triangle, no. Parang you create one cutting plane, tapos slide nyo lang siya, you can create another cutting plane. So that's how we do it. No? Pero since CAD naman tayo, doesn't really matter yung orientation natin. Minsan nga ang ginagawa ng students is dalawang cutting planes that are parallel to the folding line. So para parallel to the horizontal siya. Ganyan. Basta as long as it intersects the two planes at defined points. No? So, for example, nag-intersect sila dyan. So, madaling makita yung mga points. No? Parang ganyan. So, we can do something like this. Pero just to show you na hindi nagmamatter yung orientation, I'll just choose arbitrary orientations. No? So, si cutting plane 1 ko, I can do it something like this. And label natin CP1. Then, I'll do cutting plane number 2. I'll just do something like this. No? Ito, dito si CP2. Now, I've done this a lot of times before, no? And because, again, hindi accurate itong planes, I could be sobrang off ng magiging final answer ko dito. Kasi very sensitive itong si special cutting plane method. Dapat exact yung mga nakukuha yung points. For now, i-accept na natin yun na baka may konting inaccuracies. Pero again, if this were done in if the planes were generated using AutoCAD, exact yung mga points na yun, very accurate yung method na to. Right? So, let's try to do it. Meron tayong CP1, and the reason why I like to change to assign colors for this is because mas madaling matrack yung kung aling cutting plane or aling projection lines nanggaling yung mga cutting planes, or aling cutting planes nanggaling yung mga projection lines natin. Okay? So, let's do this. Meron tayong, kunwari ito, this cutting plane right here creates a trace from this trace right here and this trace right here. Ang gagawin lang natin is hanapin lang natin yung parang quote-unquote yung trace na yun dito sa baba. Okay? So, dito, this is XZ. And also, class daw, hindi nagmamatter kung saan yung gagawin yung cutting plane. Similar to this method sa cutting plane na to, hindi nagmamatter kung sa taas ko siya ginawa or sa baba. No? You can still find the answer. So, I could have easily done as well. Kumbaga, pwede namang ang ginawa ko is nandito yung cutting planes ko. Para ganun. That can also work, no? As long as it has distinct na parang intersections dun sa plane natin. Pero, again, let's just do it this way, no? Okay? So, let's find the trace. Ito, this is in between XZ. So, baba natin siya. Projection line, XZ. XZ is here. So, ito naman, this is XY. Baba natin siya. XY is here. Okay? And this is its trace, no? Next is this is 4, 5. Tama? 4, 5. So, that's 4, 5. Ito naman, this is, what's this? 5, 6. So, nandito ang 5, 6. Okay? And we connect it here. Alright? Ang gagawin natin is, ipapa-intersect natin yung two traces natin, no? Ito. And nagkataon na nag-intersect sila dito. Pero usually, parang ang intersection nila is somewhere, kunwari ganyan, mga ganyan. No? Pero ito, hindi ko alam kung uh, swerte lang ba na nag-intersect sila mismo sa XY, no? Pero hindi siya all the time nag-intersect sa, ano, no? It will be in an arbitrary location. Right? So, nag-intersect sila dito. And I'll just mark this point as, ito yung mark, ito yung point na yun, no? I'll just mark that point. And let's call this as point 1, P1 lang. So, P1 to indicate that it came from the cutting plane number 1. So, siya si P1, no? Alright? So, you can think of P1 as sort of an imaginary piercing point, if you can call it that. No? Para siyang imaginary piercing point. Kasi the way we create LOIs is, meron tayong two piercing points na kinukuha. Tapos, connecting the two piercing points, we can find the LOI. Alright? Next is, ang gagawin natin is, hanapin naman natin yung piercing point na nakikita from cutting plane number 2. No? So, this is XY, XZ. So, baba natin siya. So, that's XZ. XZ is, eto, tama. Next is, ito naman is from YZ. So, YZ is this one. Tama. Okay. Okay. Next is ito. This is from 4-6. So, and this is 5-6. Like so. Tama. Now, I'll just extend this and mukhang tatawid ako sa kabilang projection out sa kabilang view dito, no? Or maybe not. Extend natin siya. Hindi naman. So, this is now our cutting plane number 2. Or imaginary piercing point number 2, no? Or let's just call it P2. So, P2 signifying that it came from cutting plane number 2. Okay, so it makes it a lot easier to track kung different yung projection line sila. So, again, itong magenta, itong P2 came from the magenta cutting plane. Itong yellow cutting P1 came from the imaginary cutting plane 2. So, if I connect this, and I'll use the final answer, no? Use final answer. If I connect these two, ito and ito, this is now my imaginary LOI. Okay, and let's label it. Oops. Let's call it ILOI, no, for imaginary. Okay, so that's an imaginary LOI, and usually the imaginary LOI is represented by an arrowhead. So we can probably use a triangle siguro para signify kasi I haven't figured it out, no, pero parang hindi ganun kadali magdagdag ng arrowheads dito sa sa AutoCAD. Pero we can probably extend this, kunwari ganyan, to show na imaginary siya. Parang ganyan. I'll just lengthen this a bit to show na imaginary LOI siya. And if you want, you can also add arrowheads, no? I usually like to add a triangle, so I'll just use the polygon tool. And I'll say 3 sides. Tapos, center of the polygon, let's place it here. Tapos, we can do circumscribe. Yeah, circumscribe pwede. And I'll just trace it like so dito, no? Parang trace natin yung rotation niya. Pag ganyan. Or we can make it smaller. Probably ganyan. Hindi naman matter to, no? And this is purely, siguro aesthetic na lang to, no? I just like to copy this. I-mirror ko na lang siya. Sige, let's copy this. Lipat natin sa kabila. Pero obviously, we need to rotate it, no? So, rotate. Again, you have the choice of not doing this, no? Sorry. You have the choice of not doing this. Ito, ano lang naman siya, no? Ilan ba? 60 ba dapat? I think 60. No, sorry. 60 nga. Tama? So, parang to show na imaginary LOI siya, it's an extending line because this is a line wherein kung saan nakikita natin yung um, if the planes were infinitely expanding, no, this is where the imaginary LOI will be found. Okay, so um eto, we did 2 points, no, pero in reality we could have easily done multiple points, no, kasi it only takes 2 points to create a line. So kunwari if I added a third cutting plane kunwari dito, no, let's label it CP3. If you did a third cutting plane tapos ginawa nyo ulit yung methodology, you would find P3 along this line, no, itong ILOY natin. So all of the cutting planes, kaya hindi nagmamatter kung ano yung pinili yung cutting plane, no, kasi it will lie as long as you did it accurately, no, it will lie along the imaginary LOY. And ito pinakita ko ata sa concept video din na nag-add ng third cutting plane tapos nag-lie siya along the line, no. Hindi ko ipapakita ngayon dito para hindi masyadong mahaba yung video, no. Pero there might be some inaccuracies again because na hindi ganun ka-accurate to. Pero I think I recreated this planes right here tapos nung ginawa ko siya ulit with the recreation, perfectly aligned yung mga planes natin. Alright? So we can end there. That's how we get the imaginary LOI. Ito, yung piercing points and LOI, not so hard to do. Yung, especially if you think about the mechanical na methods that you need to do to find it. Hindi ganun kahirap, no? Ang siguro mahirap lang dito na part is yung imagination, yung concepts behind it, no? Kung bakit nag-work yung methods, no? I highly encourage that you also read into it para lang, para mas may theoretical basis kayo, no? Mas maalala nyo siya. Pero, you can get away with just memorizing the steps, no? Pero for me, if you want to really understand why it works, mas maganda kung aralin nyo yung concepts behind it. So please watch also the video indicating the concepts. Okay, so that's it. I'll end this online asynchronous video lecture. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.